All right. We're going to get started here. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Tina. Happy Saturday. If this is your first time joining me, like I said, my name is Tina. I'm a happiness coach. I help people go from being in a dark place, feeling depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, those kind of things, to being in a happier place. And today I am going to be talking about an amazing subject. We're going to go deep on this. We're even going to get a little biblical about it. So today we are talking about love. And that is going to be the topic tonight. Welcome everybody on TikTok. Go ahead and tap the screen, share the live. We're going to get started here. So we're going to talk about love today, what it is and what it is not. And it's a little bit different. So for those of you who have watched me before, you'll know that I'm Christian-ish. I have some background in Christian faith, but I also add to it from other sources. And so today we'll kind of be going a little bit back and forth between the different viewpoints and kind of examining everything. So what is love? Well, first of all, God is love, and love is God. Okay, love is a choice, and what do I mean by that? It means we have to actively choose love over fear, and because there is love or there's fear, and fear is just false evidence appearing real. Love is the only thing that's real. It's the only thing that truly exists. Everything else is either a cry for or an expression of love. Those are the two things. So when I say love is a choice, it is always choosing love over fear. Any of those kind of behaviors that cause us to run away from love. Okay? Love is also work. It takes work to make that choice. It's not like the romantic stuff in the movies where it's all like, magical and everything. There's parts of that, there's components of that that can be incorporated. However, that is not what true love actually is, not in its purest form. Love is a balancing of struggling to hang on and struggling to let go. Because, think of it. If you were, I'm trying to think of, I think it was the Green Mile or it's of Mice and Men. But in there was a man who was mentally challenged, and he didn't realize the strength of his love. He loved this, I think it was either a cat or a bunny or something like that. And basically he just hung on to it so tight that he ended up killing it, right? So with love, there is a certain amount of you need to release, you need to let go, as well as sometimes you need to hang on. And this is a bit of a balancing act, right? Of just knowing how much to hang on and how much to let go. And this can be some of the big challenges with understanding what real love is. To me, what real love is the deliberate intention and act of removing all fear that stands as a barrier between you and I, right? So now, is all love romantic? Is all love physical? No. There's many, many different types of love, but this applies to all forms of it, whether it's love for a parent, love for a sibling, love for a friend, love for a coworker, love for an animal, whatever it is, that there is an intentional act of removing any fear that stands in the way of love, because it's not real. It's false evidence appearing real, and it's a matter of removing those barriers. Now, sometimes there's a lot of barriers that get built up, and there's a lot of fears that get built up between people. However, the very act of intentionally working towards removing those fears is an act of love in and of itself. There's nothing more powerful than true intimacy. And what do I mean by true intimacy? True intimacy is into me see. Okay? means I allow you to see into me and you allow me to see into you. And when we do that, that is where we become vulnerable. That's where we are exposed, where the other person gets to see our not so pretty sides, our, our darkness, our ugliness, our warts and all of that kind of stuff. It allows us to see each other's humanity, and to have somebody see that not so pretty side of you, and to be able to still look you in the eyes, and not only do they not run away from that, but they actually look at you directly and they fall even deeper in love with you. That brings two souls together on a level that just fuses you together. And that is a powerful love in the most purest form. And what we need to understand is that all of us, each and every one of us, has this light within us. This light cannot be destroyed within us. All it can be done is covered up. And oftentimes when we go through life, it's almost like, as we go through life, it's kind of like we start to collect this darkness, this soot. Some of us get more of it than others. And if we don't actively work towards cleaning this soot off, it ends up covering up the light. And then we think that we are the darkness. And then we start believing the fears that we've been told about ourselves. And so the act of growth, the act of change, the act of becoming the best version of yourself is an act of love, and it is an act of cleaning away the soot, the stuff that doesn't actually belong to you. It never should have been there in the first place. So know that each and every one of us, that light that is within us, that is the representation, that is the spark of God, the spark of love that exists within all of us. And when we do our own inner work, we are able to recognize that peace in others. And that scares the hell out of them sometimes, because they aren't ready to that. That's a different mindset than the way that they see themselves. And that can be very frightening, because maybe in the past, if you've grown up in an environment like I did, that there were things that happened that you start to believe certain things about yourself. You start to believe the fear about what you've been through and what that means about you. And this kind of brings me to the whole concept of sin, okay? And most people focus on the sin itself, but the thing is, the word sin is actually an archery term, okay? It is not about, oh, you did these checklist things wrong and that means you're going to hell. It's like, okay, that's a little bit more Christian, Bible-y kind of stuff. But when you think of sin as an archery term, and what it means is to miss the mark. If you have missed the mark, then think about it. In archery terms, does that mean that you can't take another shot? Does that mean you don't get another arrow and that you can't shoot another shot? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. So everybody focuses so much on the fact that, oh, I sinned. It's like, no, you missed the mark. The mark, the target is love. And if you've gone off target, it means that you've been too focused on fear, which is the sin, and the missing of the mark, and missing of the target, which is to come into the full expression of love within ourselves. So what we need to do, instead of focusing so much on the sin, or focusing so much on the mistakes and the errors and the things that we have done wrong, to focus on clearing that soot away from our souls and being able to clear that away so that we can be fully present and receive love. Because as we have this darkness that covers us and covers our heart, covers our soul, we're not able to receive the full light of love. We're not able to express the full light of love to others. And so this act of cleansing within ourselves is the act of actively removing and confronting all of the things that we are most afraid of. And when we face that, and it's much easier to face it when we know that that is a true illusion. That is not real, because the truth of us is that spark of light that is within each and every one of us. And that light can never be destroyed. That is you at the purest form. That is you at your highest self. And that is within all of us. And our job is to remove the soot that's gathered up. And it's, instead of archery, maybe think of it more like paintball, right? So, you know, you go through life and you get hit with these paintball things and they splatter on you and they start covering things up. If you don't take the time to clean that off, then it's going to eventually start getting difficult to move through life. That stuff will start to get heavy. It will start to restrict your movement. It will start to block you. And then you got to start looking and removing the blocks. And, you know, the longer that's been sitting on your clothes, the more it, you know, the stain kind of sets in, but it still does not have the ability to destroy that light within you. Okay, so always remember that love is a choice. We have to actively choose love, and by doing that, it means we are choosing to look fear in the face, and we are choosing to say, this is not real, this is not who I authentically am, and what is that best version of me. Okay? So this leads me to talking about marriage and how the two souls, they say in the Bible that when you are married, the two become one flesh, right? They become one soul. However, there's oftentimes that we join together what we think is love, and really it's more out of fear. And how you know that is that if it gets tested, if your love gets tested and it ends up crumbling, then it had its foundations based in fear, not in love. That doesn't mean that it wasn't beneficial. That doesn't mean that there weren't lessons that needed to be learned there. Because I truly believe that everybody is brought into our lives for a reason. And we learn that reason, and if they are meant to be here longer, we will continue to learn from one another. However, if we have learned everything that we have learned, then it's kind of like you get separated, but it's not like a true separation. It's more like getting reassigned. What you have to teach is required elsewhere. And so you may get pulled away to go do other things, but we are never truly apart. We are all one at the source when we connect in with God. Okay? And why I wanted to talk about love so much tonight is because it's not so much the things that others do to us that actually destroy us. It is the stuff that we do to ourselves that truly harms us. People, especially if you operate from a love-based perspective instead of a fear-based perspective, that because when somebody else is trying to deliberately harm you, trying to go out of their way to actually hurt you, and you are coming from a true, hey Peter, good to see you. When you are coming from a true sense of love, then even when somebody is trying to harm you, all you can see is them operating from a place of fear. And this kind of reminds me of basically, so this is a bit more of a Christian thing. So if you're not Christian, try to keep an open mind and take what you like and leave the rest, kind of thing. So when they say Jesus died on the cross for us, he bore our sins. So, and one of the things is, as he was up there in pain, in agony, he cried out to God, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Now, Jesus wasn't actually crying for himself. He could bear the pain that others were inflicting on him. That wasn't the problem. I think what really hurt him at his core is knowing that they were in so much pain that they thought that this was the right thing to do. And I think that is the pain. And when they talk of Jesus dying for us, for our sins, and dying on the cross, I think that is more what it is, because Jesus understood the true nature of love, and that it's the only thing that's real, and anything else is an illusion. And to know, it's like somebody, under the effects of anesthetic. I don't know if you guys have ever seen those TikTok videos where, like, the wife, she comes out of anesthetic and she's going on about how hot the nurse was and he was really good looking and everything. And so it's kind of one of those things. It's like you can't really take her serious because she's still under the effects of anesthetic, right? And she's like a little bit loopy. So it's the same kind of thing, that when people operate out of fear, they're operating not in reality. It's like they're having a nightmare and they're living that out. So that's kind of where it comes from with that kind of stuff of, looking at the situation and seeing it through the eyes of love, seeing it through the power of love. And this is where I kind of go a little bit off on some of the Christian stuff, because I was thinking a lot today. I'm like, okay, so in the terms, because I know I have become divorced, and so it's been about a year now, and I never thought that that was going to be my story. I thought it was going to definitely be till death do us part, and that it was going to be that way. And people often, they're confused as to why my husband and I split, even though we're technically having to live together right now. That's a whole other story. It's more financial reasons and friendship than anything. And I'm very appreciative of that and grateful. But the reasons for leaving weren't because of he's not good enough or I'm not good enough, any of those kind of things, or they're more, it got to a point where to stay actually inflicts more pain, and that's not love. And this kind of goes back to the understanding whether or not it's more important to hang on or more important to let go. And I cannot operate from a place of being in where that person cannot be themselves with me, that person has to, you can see the fear in their eyes, that they just don't feel like they're at the place that they need to be, that they cannot be who they authentically are, and then that causes me to not be authentically who I am. So in that case, is it really love if you just stay together when all you guys are doing is existing together, tolerating each other, out of the name of sticking by a contract that seems to have outlived its purpose? And I know this really goes against the typical teachings for Christians, and I'm not advocating for divorce at all. Hey Peter, thank you so much for the gifts. Hey Mark, good to see you. Welcome back. Because, I mean, think of it, it's like, do you want to say at the end of your life that you stayed together for all of those years knowing that you were still not fully loving each other? The whole point of marriage is to love each other at the point that you did when you first got together. And if it starts getting to that point and then you can't actually resolve it, then do the number of years matter? No, they don't. They feel empty. It really hurts. It hurts you, it hurts them. And then you're just living under the illusion that you're happy together. And that is an unfulfilling life. That is extremely painful. Thank you so much, Peter. Oh, look at all the gifts. And I knew I couldn't tolerate who I was becoming because I kept getting irritated. I kept lashing out. I kept getting angry and mistreating my husband because he was not being who I wanted him to be. And he couldn't, he tried, but he couldn't be who I wanted him to be. And he wasn't allowed to be himself. He wouldn't acknowledge who he was. And so you can have a divorce and have that amicable. We don't have to hurt each other when we separate. And I really think that the true meaning of divorce is being divorced from God, God himself. And God is love. So if you are divorced from love, that is the problem. If you're staying together out of fear because what will other people think if we actually get divorced? What will other people think if we said, oh shit, we actually made a mistake here? You know, but you stay in it because you said that you were going to do this till the end of your life. And all other sins are forgiven. Why can this one not be? All other sins can be forgiven, right? So, and like I said earlier in the training, sin is to miss the mark. And the mark is love. The target is love. And if you cannot operate in that, then it is better to release rather than to hang on so tight that you kill the soul of each other, right? Because it hurt me. Like, so there's still love there. It's just not a husband and wife love. It's a familial love. It's like my cousins and my nieces and nephews, and it's still a love. It's just not a husband and wife love. And that is what needed to change for our relationship. So I think it's much more important to follow the true act of loving one another. And even if that means you have to let that person go because you know that you're hurting them. And that you have to be able to allow them to be who they actually are without actually trying to change them. Because if you try to change them, then you are actually robbing yourself and them of the lesson of them being in your life. When we open ourselves up to that, when we open ourselves up and we remove the barriers of fear that stand between us, because they're only an illusion anyway. It's not real. So we open ourselves up to that. And we start to receive the lessons, the growth, the true intimacy, to be able to allow somebody into our own hearts, to allow somebody in to see what is less than perfect with us, right? And we all have those things, right? So, I think that is one of the most important things of really truly embracing love in a way that allows us to actually connect with one another. And when we remove the barriers to fear, or the barrier of fear, then that is when we can truly plug in to the love of God. Now, how do you do that? Because it's not just, oh, my love into you or your love into me. That's not how it is. It is In order to truly exchange love, you need to be tapped into the source of love, which is your creator, which is God, which is whatever it is, the universe, spirit, whatever you believe in. Maybe it's science, maybe it's nothingness. I don't know. Whatever it is that you find is the truest form of openness, of acceptance, of peace, of love, connectedness, all of that kind of stuff. Whatever that truest form is for you, being tapped into that and being able to share that with another is the true form of love. And when I think of all of us have a personal journey, and I think that is where we are called for that. It has to be something that you shift. So for example, when I first met my husband, one of the requirements to be with him, so I was extremely spiritual, very tapped in, had a strong connection with God, and we talked about those things. His was more Christian-based, church every Sunday kind of thing, and not that I was opposed to those kind of things, but it just wasn't part of my routine kind of thing. And I do believe in Jesus, went to Sunday school as a kid, that kind of stuff. So one of the things is I had to become baptized because somehow I was not good enough. And my connection, that was a way to prove my faith. I had to go through these outward trappings, these rituals, these ceremonies to prove that I was a child of God. And I'm like, first of all, that's ridiculous. We are all children of God. And so the funny thing is going in, it's like once I got in and I saw behind the scenes, even though they had all of the right wording, they had all of the structures and everything else like that in the church, there were, not all, but there were some people there that I'm like, there is no true connection. You don't have this true connection to God. You know how to talk all the words, but you don't actually have a personal connection, a belief anchored in your heart. And yet I was the one that had to become baptized. And I'm like, what? Okay, wait a minute. If you can't reach out, you can't cry out to God. Even an atheist in the trenches of war will cry out to God in desperation when it comes down to the wire. So, if you, in this environment, in this place of worship, are not able to truly connect with God, then there's a disconnect. There's a lot of fear there. And I think sometimes people become so afraid of the things that they might do wrong. They focus so much on the sin part rather than looking at it. It's an archery term, and you get to take another shot. You get to keep taking shots until you hit on target. All sins are forgiven. You just have to keep trying. And this is something that we do in entrepreneurship. We do this in business. It doesn't matter how many times you miss it. How many times are you taking that shot? How many times are you coming up to bat? How many times are you getting knocked down and getting back up again? That's what actually matters. For as long as we have breath in our bodies, we have to keep trying. We have to keep going. Now, does that mean we don't change direction, we don't pivot, we don't kind of go, maybe this isn't the right path, maybe I need to try something different? Okay, great, do that, try something different. But just know that nothing's unforgivable. Nothing is unforgivable. If you have a direct connection, if you have cultivated that relationship with the Creator, with a power greater than yourself, something outside of you. And that can be done in any form of whatever religion. I'm not a religious expert, don't know enough about all of those things. All I'm doing is sharing my experience here. And I know in my darkest friggin' times, man, when it was just me, I was still never alone. Why? Because for all the shit that I went through in my childhood, for all the abuse that I endured and suffered through, the one gift that it gave me was a deep, deep connection with God and a deep spirituality. It was the only thing that I had to hold on to. And maybe it's just a figment of my imagination. And I used to fight this stuff so much because I fought being connected with God. I fought being spiritual. I was very logical, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And I would argue different verses in the Bible, and well, what about this? And this contradicts that, and this is like, I just go down this whole pathway, and I'm like, that doesn't actually serve me, until I kind of got it through my head that whether this is real or imagined, the truth is irrelevant, although I still think that there is a truth there. But the truth is irrelevant. And if it brought me comfort today, if it helped me live through another day and not take my own life, then I'm going to go for crazy imagination if that's all it is, okay? So I invite you to at least try. I double dog dare you to try talking to God like he is your best friend. Like he's your bro, he's the guy that you hang out with, your friend that is always there, because it is that personal connection that you develop, not the ones that are in certain structures. You have to do it this way and you have to do it that way and you have to follow this process and that process. That is not the true connection. Those, I'm not discounting those things, those ceremonies, those rituals, those structures. They can bring comfort by having consistency, having repetition, having predictability. Those are all good things. But if they start to become a prison, if those things are not done correctly, I mean, even Jesus lost his shit when he saw the one time that he really lost it and he started flipping tables was because he saw money lenders in a place of worship, and that was not allowed. That was not cool. Why? Because it's disconnecting from love. So this whole journey of life is about our deepening our personal connection with God. And it's our mission, our purpose, to find that full expression of love within ourselves, and for that to take whatever form that looks like for you. And I often think too, if Jesus came here today, what kind of stuff would he actually flip tables about? Because I mean, there's some things that Christians flip tables about and they get all bent out of shape about that I don't think Jesus would actually get upset about. So, the LGBTQ community, okay? I have some opinions on those kind of things, but at the end of the day, who you love is not a sin, okay? Who you love is not a sin. There are so many other things that you can do that are far more destructive, far more painful than who you choose to love, okay? So, all forms of love are our ability to connect. Our ability to connect with one another all depends on removing the layers of fear that get built up over the years, that get deposited us as we go through life. Example, when we look at holding on to unforgiveness, that requires some sort of judgment. That requires some sort of fear of that they're missing the mark. They are off target. And so you hold a judgment, whatever that may be. Maybe you don't like people that swear. And you're like, oh, that's not good. That's taking the Lord's name in vain, or whatever it is. That is a form of judgment. That is fear that whatever it is that they're doing will have some sort of effect on you. And so in order to protect yourself, you want them to stop what they're doing. Okay. whatever's going on, it's the stuff that is within us. It is that bitterness and hate that is in our own hearts that will cause us more harm than anything. So when you go through life, removing that anger, removing that fear, removing that hate from your heart is so much more important, because it will damage you in ways that you can't even imagine. That the buildup of that in your heart needs to be purged. It blocks your connection. It blocks your ability to be one with God, be one with the source, be one with your creator. Because you can't connect with God and actively live in sin, kind of thing. And I don't like saying in that, because it's like I'm not like a Bible-thumping preacher kind of thing. But remember, to sin is to miss the mark. So when you're in a fear state. So when anybody is acting out any bad behavior, anything that is not for their best interest, and it doesn't always feel like it's not for their best interest. It always usually feels good. It starts out as a good thing. Any addiction at all starts out as seeming like a solution and then becomes the problem. And it becomes the problem because you gravitated towards something that's fear-based rather than something that is love-based, right? No, and when I say love-based, the love and light that is within us, the purity that is already within us. And it's a matter of removing the soot that gets put on our souls as we go through life. Just double checking my notes here. And guys, when I talk about sin, this isn't about being perfect. And that, you have to do things in a certain way. I often like to think of, when we think of a child and what it is that we want to teach them, do we want to teach them, say, never get angry, and you teach your child to never ever get angry? Do you think that's a good thing? Or do you think it might be better, and I know parents talk a lot about, never fight in front of the children. And I agree, especially if you've been in a home like myself, where there were constant battles. It was a war zone where I grew up. So fighting in front of the children has negative consequences like that. However, never showing any anger, never showing any disagreements or anything like that, well, that doesn't allow the child to learn the lesson that arguments aren't the end of the world, disagreements aren't the end of the world, and they would actually learn the skill set of watching their parents be able to work something out. It's only when you allow that anger to become destructive, where you are lashing out at each other rather than communicating, seeking to understand, responding, and coming at it from a place of working together to create a solution, that you both have each other's best interest at heart. But oftentimes we're like, you butt heads together because you end up both being in fear at the same time. And so when you're in fear, you will lash out, you will attack, you won't operate from a place of love. Operating from a place of love is understanding, it's listening, it's kindness, it is patient, it is tolerant, it doesn't keep a record of wrongs. It doesn't go, well, this is the last time, you did this 20 other times and now you're doing it again. And it's like, okay, that's not love, that is fear. You're afraid because that affects you. That affects you, and it's making you scared. And instead of owning your own fear, you're projecting it onto somebody else, saying you need to actually change these things because this behavior is not good. If they aren't actually physically harming you, then you have to let somebody kind of stew in their own shit and fight their way through the fear, because the fear is not real anyway. And if you are truly in a state of love, you can look at it going, okay, you got a few more demons to battle. Yeah, I see one to your left there. You got this. I'm here for you, though. I'm here for you. You need to fight a few more? That's okay. It's okay. it's really that kind of state, right? And it's kind of like each generation has this pendulum swing. We try to do things better than the previous generation, and sometimes we swing a little bit too far to the left, and other times swing too far to the right. So, you know, in my generation, we grew up, like parents didn't, they weren't around, we were latchkey kids, you know, there was abuse, your feelings, who freaking cares? Like you got kicked outside and come back at when the sun went down. They had no cell phones, no way to track us, nothing like that. You're on your own, kid, out you go, right? And you better be back by sundown. I remember this one time, my brother and I, we were coming from my aunt's, and it was I'd say about a 20-minute drive. But we were trying to get back from my aunt's to the house before sunset because we knew we were going to get our ass beat if we weren't there on time. And what ended, my brother had this like mountain bike, this dirt bike kind of thing, and it had like these big springs, big tires, and it like could just go over all kinds of rough road. And I had this like hand-me-down 10-speed bike with the friggin' handlebars bent up the wrong way, and so we're going along, and it's like the scene of Bram Stoker's Dracula where they're trying to race to get to the castle before sunset, right? And it's just like this whole drama thing that ended up happening. And then my brother and I, we got there, but we were going past this one place, and the curb was really, really high, and I jumped down the one curb, and then I went to go jump up onto the next curb, and the front tire came off, and it went boom right down. I was like, oh my god. And my brother like took off, and he like turned around, he's like, where are you? I'm like, my bike. Those are fun times. Sorry, I went off on a complete little tangent there, but that was a little fun story of some of the things of just understanding. Oh yes, I was talking about the pendulum swinging, right? So we grew up in that generation where we didn't have a whole lot of interaction. We existed, we were quiet, and then you ended up swinging over to the next generation where they ended up having the helicopter kids, right? You know, where the parents were there and everybody's getting the participation trophies and all that kind of stuff because they wanted to make up for the lack of encouragement, the lack of involvement that they experienced in their childhood. So we try to correct and then end up sometimes overcorrecting. And so then those kids, they grow up, they're all protected, they haven't seen parents fighting in front of each other, they have no idea how to deal with the realities of the world, and they get out in the real world, they're like, oh shit, I have no idea what to do because everything was so well protected and insulated. And then you end up getting generations starting to criticize each other because you're not dealing with the same abuse that they dealt with, right? So it's like both are abuse. It's like if you don't equip your child and prepare them to be able to, you know, properly handle disagreement or criticism or any of those kind of things, and they, you know, are going through life so protected, so isolated, the first time they get exposed to something threatening, they're going to crumble. That is not healthy, right? That's not good, right? So there has to be balance, and unfortunately, we will miss the mark. We will miss the mark, but we have to do our best to try to keep the focus on love as much as possible rather than the structures of what the right way is. It is much more important to operate from a place of love, which is removing all fear and seeing what is the best way. Why do I always feel less anxious when I leave the house, even if I'm safe with my partner? Why do I always... That's a good question, Jacob. So you feel less anxious when you leave the house. Even if you're safe with your partner. So when you leave the house, what's going on? Oh, you feel more anxious when you leave the house. Okay. So I would pay attention to what kind of things that you're telling yourself the word tracks that are going on in your mind when you've left the house of what is it that you think is going to happen. So it's a matter of giving your voice, your fears a voice, of writing down what those things are. It's like, oh, well, what if we get into a car accident? Or if you can give me an example, I'm just kind of throwing out some different things. It's like, well, what if we get mugged? Or what if we've left the stove on? Or what are the anxious thoughts that are coming into your mind? You know what? I think for those that are on Facebook, I think I'm going to wrap up the live here, but I'm going to stay on TikTok and I'm going to answer Jacob's question. And Jacob, I'm going to invite you, and then we can kind of talk through some of this stuff if you're open to that. Let me know. Okay. For those that are on Facebook, if you jumped in late or you're watching the replay, type in #replay. That'll help boost the algorithms. We can get this out to more people, and then it'll help them. So my goal is to help 1 million people heal past trauma, and then you can also watch any of the other recordings of my YouTube channel, and you can see thumbnails of my artwork like I have behind me on my YouTube channel as well, and there's links if you wish to purchase. It helps support the channel, helps me continue to do this and to offer this training, these insights free. Okay, so all right. Oh, thank you so much, Insomniac. All right, guys, so on Facebook, I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. I'll see you again tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. For those that are on TikTok, let's kick around and let's have some more Q&A. If you are on Facebook and want to hop over to TikTok, Tina B125, my link is on my Facebook page as well to my TikTok channel, okay? And you can come ask questions, and we'll have a little bit of an interactive Saturday night. All right? Take care, guys. Bye.